what do you mean? When I'm thinking about
There we go, just like that. Hello.
Hello, so how are you, man?
I'm doing okay. Actually, it's been kind of a weird and wild week, but making it through it so far. We were supposed to have some major thunderstorm come through today with tornadoes,
Okay.
and we never get tornadoes here, so this ought to be fun.
It's a big thing, isn't it, in LA now?
Well, no, I'm okay. So I'm an hour south of Seattle.
Okay.
I'm just up the coast from LA. Yeah. Um, Basically the same earthquake fault line. So if they go, we go. I'm sure. We'll be in good company. And where are you at today? Where am I talking to you from?
Spain. I'm in a place called Cantabria.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, is this residence or is this
Yeah.
just where you hang out? Oh, it is. Okay. Okay. Cool.
I grew up in Sheffield and then moved here when I was about mid-30s.
Okay. Okay. I've heard that it's a beautiful, beautiful place to be.
It is. Up on the north coast is really, really nice. We're about 10 minutes from the beach, so it's...
Oh, well, that's rough. And I'll bet it's a beautiful beach too.
It is. It's most of Spain's really built up, but this part of the world is kind of still left pretty much as it always has been.
Right, right. That's probably because you have Trump over there, yeah, making changes for you.
Donald Trump. We don't want to go into that, do you really want to go into that?
Actually, no, we don't. No, I'm not, and I'm not giving him any more airtime than that. So, anyway, I'll go do a quick lead in, and we'll just get right underway if you're ready.
Yeah.
All right, and we've got it. It's scheduled for 40 minutes. That's all it gives us, and I'm totally okay with that because we just ate the first 15 trying to figure out what was up anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right, here we go. Hey guys, you are watching the Groove Zone Network's KONVOS and listening to us on X5 Radio. Coming to you out of Western Washington today, out of the South Puget Sound area. I'm DJ D Phoenix, and with me today I've got a very special guest, and I'm totally stoked about this. Hanging for a little while with Robin Taylor-Firth of OlyWA and Nightmares on Wax, and Bud. Oh no, I'm going to say it wrong. BUDNUBAC.
You back.
Okay. So excuse me just totally slaughtering that, but BUDNUBAC, BUDNUBAC. And if you guys haven't heard that yet, you've got to check it out. Some really, really great music coming out of this man. So good morning, or good evening, I should say.
Yeah, well, good evening for me, yeah. Can I just say something about what I'm doing at the minute as well?
Yeah, would you please?
It's a new project called RTEPH 88, which is RTEPH 88.
Okay.
There's a new album out at the minute. It came out on the 7th of March on President Records here in London. Okay. And it's the record's called His Master's Dead.
Okay. Yeah.
Master's voice.
Let's discuss that a little bit.
At the beginning of the recorded audio industry, and the AI and the new tech, all that markla is, well, maybe going to be its demise. We'll see. It's a comment on that anyway, the title. Okay.
That's good.
That's literally what came out 2 weeks ago.
Okay. And what platforms is it on? Like, where is it available right now?
All the usual ones. Spotify. It went out through an aggregator. Went out through Orchard, which is like what everybody uses. So if you go looking for it, you'll find it. Okay.
Cool. And so, yeah, I want to make sure that we drill that into everybody's head, because now, is it like a real departure from like Nightmares on Wax or even BUDNUBAC, or what?
I mean, Nightmares on Wax, they used to take care of the musical side of things. So I make the same music as I've always made. It progresses over the years, of course.
Right.
Sounds like me. It has a lot of piano on it, and it's basically piano over electronics, subs, dubs, distortion, all kind of things I like, you know.
And I'm glad you said that, Robin, because it's true. Because you feel your style throughout all the different projects that you've done, and which reminds me, I wanted to ask you, who were some of your major influences as you were like getting into music, or even before you got into music?
who are the main major influences? I had a very kind of strange musical upbringing because I nice white middle class Yorkshire boy, but I grew up in a Jamaican district.
Wow. Okay.
Sheffield was a big destination for the original Jamaicans who came over.
Right.
My best friends, his dad came over on the Windrush and things like that.
Wow.
So
okay, cool.
While I was growing up, listening to what we all listened to, I was also hearing the music of my mates' elder brothers. So I quite a sort of, without even realizing it, I was listening to a lot of reggae, a lot of Marley, a lot of Hitosh, all that kind of stuff. But I was also doing quite a lot of classical music because I was learning to play the piano. And I was also quite into jazz, so your Chet Bakers, your Thelonious Monks. And of course, then I got into electronic music as well at the beginning of the 90s.
Okay.
So a strange mix of things. I also married a Spanish woman who I ended up divorcing, or she divorced me, sorry. And then I married a Cuban woman. So I've got all this kind of like Latin influences as well. So but again, it's all just like it's kind of part of life. So it's sort of around you. So you're not kind of studying it, if you know what I mean.
Right. You're just absorbing it.
Yeah. The same way as everybody else takes it in. The difference being between me and people who don't make music is that I then make music with that kind of influence. So.
Right. And that's very obvious. I've noticed that, all of that, and I think that's where like I get the absolute thrill in being able to spend a little bit of time with you today, is because Olive has been one of my mainstays for since the day that both albums were released.
Right.
And so, this is a really big deal. And, also I know that, some of our audience too, being familiar with your work, this is kind of a fun addition that we're doing. But yeah, to hear your style go throughout all of the music. So one more time, remind us the name of the newest project. What is it again?
RTEPH 88. RTEPH 88.
Okay, so that's what we want to look for. And like Robin said, it's on a lot of platforms out there, Spotify, if nothing else.
And then the album's called His Master's Dead.
Okay, His Master's Dead.
I'm looking at a computer on the album for.
Okay, so full album?
Yeah, 15 tunes.
Cool. How long did it take to put this one together? Or kind of when you did this one, is this the first project? Or is this the first album of the project?
Yes, it is. Basically, I moved up here. I was in Madrid for a good 20 years, and then I moved up here, a house, and I put a studio together, this studio. And it was the first thing I did in the studio.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
March 25. I started probably about a year ago, March 24.
Okay. Nice.
Good enough to put it out, so.
Wow, and so you just set out recently within the last couple of weeks too, so it's that fresh.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Cool. I haven't gotten a chance to see any reviews on it. What are you hearing so far? What's the feedback that's happening?
Mostly peer review has been pretty good. It's a good record. I've been doing it long enough to know when I do something that's all right and something that's not so good.
No doubt. So would you say
record? It's interesting. It uses a lot of the way I use the piano in it and the way it's mixed with the electronics. There's D&B in there. There's some slow house. There's some solo piano. I'm also really into using distortion and things. So sonically, it's quite exciting and interesting. And
very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I can't wait to hear it. I'm actually really stoked. I'm very excited. I was actually just listening to BUDNUBAC on right before we started today. Yeah. And of course, there's Nightmares on Wax. Now, your association with Nightmares on Wax is pretty long standing. How long has it been that you've been kind of in?
We started working together when I first met them. It was two DJs, George Evelyn and Kevin Harper.
Okay.
And we did some kind of house tunes for Warp. And then Kevin left. He wasn't too well mentally, and he left. And then I did Smoker's Delight with George. And then Carl Soul, and then Mind Elevation, Inner Space Out of Sound. The last one I was heavily involved in was, I think it's called, Thought So.
Okay.
From there on, that was probably 20 years worth of work, 25 years of work.
Nice to have that kind of longevity with a project and a collective like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then when Nightmares on Wax was happening, how did Olive fall into that? Was it like towards the beginning, or was it before? Or
Olive came out again in about 1990, 91. I started working with two DJs from Sheffield as well, called Parrot and DJ Parrot and Winston Hazel. And they were the Parrot was responsible for Sweet Exorcist, a project with Richard Kirk.
oh wow,
And Winnie was responsible for Forge Masters, which were like two of the really early pioneers in bleep music in those kind of albums. And I ended up working with a pair of them, and that's sort of while I was working in all this kind of really left field electronic music, I couldn't help but think there must be some reason why there must be some way to get this to cross over, because it was all kind of massive in the clubs, but you know, it was Blur and Oasis and Sarah Brightman and stuff in the charts.
yeah, at that point in time, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it was, I ended up working with a guy called Tim Kellett from Simply Red, who we used to play trumpet in Simply Red. And I think he'd just been thrown out, or he'd been kind of sidelined or got rid of. And I got involved with him because I figured, well, he's got to have some kind of like commercial pop thing going on.
Right.
So it was a kind of a mixture of me using the music computers and making the kind of weird electronic stuff that people didn't get at the time, and him coming up with commercial things over the top. And the way it fitted in, that started in about 1995. And Nightmares on Wax has always been quite a long-term thing. I think George is a bit more prolific these days, but back then it would like be 4 years for an album. So kind of plenty of time on my hands to go away for a few years and do Olive.
Nice. Yeah, and you haven't, like, from what I can tell, I mean, according to like your bio and just some of the information I've gathered, is that you really haven't stopped. I mean, it's just been, it's just been kind of like the constant, steady flow of projects and music. Yeah, which I think
a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So with that being said, how did COVID affect all of your daily ins and outs as far as the music went?
Yeah, with COVID, it was weird because I do spend a lot of time working on my own and being on my own in the studio. I have my family and things, obviously, but
Right.
it didn't really change very much, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Doing what I do, it's a lot of time spent on my own, playing the piano, practicing, and then and writing and stuff.
Now you have to do it because that's what the law says.
Yeah, and in a way, it kind of like opened things up because people are now far more open to doing sessions over the internet and stuff. You know, I'm nearly 60. I'm not up for running around all the time and heading over to London every 5 minutes. I'm happy to do it from home, to be fair.
No doubt. So where were you when the pandemic came down? Was it?
I was in
Spain?
Okay. Yeah, I was in Madrid. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's now.
It had a big impact on people. It changed a lot of things, I think, COVID.
So much so, and probably in ways that we still won't even realize for some time to come yet either. Yeah. Oh shoot! I was just gonna say, what was I going to ask? What was I going to ask? Something kind of along those lines. Oh gosh, who knows? And that's okay. It'll either come to me or it won't. So what's kind of like currently on your plate? We just did the album. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. Have you ever toured the United States before?
I haven't. No, I've been to New York a couple of times for work.
Okay.
But I've never actually toured in the States. We were going to tour in the States. We were going to do 25 years, the 25-year anniversary of Smoker's Delight.
Cool.
And that was going to happen. I think the record came out in 95, if I'm right. Yeah. So it was going to be 2020.
Okay.
And I actually went to London to get my visa to come over.
Oh, wow.
Which was quite cool, actually, because there was a big queue of people waiting to get their visas.
At that point, yeah. Okay.
And the guy behind the desk was pretty, let's say, it was a bit
I can imagine.
He totally tore one off this woman before because she got the wrong piece of paper or something like that before me. So I kind of walked up and I kind of said, hand him the paper, and he goes, so where are you going? Why are you going to the States? I said, I'm going on tour with, he goes, oh, are you in a band? I was like, yeah, I'm in a band. I said, what's the band called? I went, Nightmares on Wax. And he went, really? And I went, yeah, Nightmares on Wax. Okay. When are you playing? So I told him the dates, and he got on his phone and sent a message to his sister saying, Nightmares on Wax are playing on this day. And he just went, welcome to the United States, and stamped the visa. Nightmares on Wax fan, which is quite good.
Wow. What are the chances? Oh my gosh.
But then I got back to Spain, and then it pretty much got called off because of the shutdown.
Okay. Oh, hey, at least you knew you had an exit out of the country, though, if need be.
True.
Wow. That's wild.
No, the bus all the way across. I think we were starting in New York and ending in LA, and we were going to go on a bus, and there's about 8 or 9 gigs. But
Okay.
I say go.
Okay. Because there's no doubt in my mind, especially because you are well known in the States. You guys have definitely got your following here for sure. But there's no doubt in my mind that you guys would definitely be able to fill venues, and whether they be like full on stadiums or whatever, because you guys are that. Who knows?
Yeah.
Kind of along the lines of what we were saying a minute ago, though. When the pandemic hit, it totally changed the face of music. The music industry, both behind the scenes and also out, in front of the audiences, and in such amazing ways that I don't really think that anybody could have foreseen what was going to happen. So many artists sprung up over the course of that 3-4 years of the weirdness and all that, and really kind of like took it down a completely different avenue that it's never been gone down before, saying goodbye to a lot of the corporate guys and stuff like that. So how, in that sense, like, how did that kind of change things for you? Because you have been on pretty much every side of the board.
It's still taking a while to get my head around. I mean, I've never been that aware of the public side of what we do.
Right.
I've never paid that much attention to it. Obviously, going out playing live and things, but I haven't done that for a few years now. The way it changes, I mean, obviously the connection is a lot more instant.
Yeah.
People do message you. You have an Instagram account, and anybody can message you. I'll get people message me asking if they can use the song in something and all the rest of it, and how do they do it. But it's that would never have happened 20 years ago.
No.
Unless you end up at the gig and we're like tapping your keyboard while you're trying to play. There was no way.
Bands and artists were much more hands off and much more unapproachable for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, you could join a fan club maybe, and get the sticker and the button and the T-shirt and all that, and the glossy 8x10. But beyond that, though, to try and reach out to an artist was almost near impossible. And with a lot of artists today, it still is. And so that's why for people like myself, even though I've been a DJ since the early 80s, it's a thrill when an artist like yourself goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, I will have a sit down with you. So, yeah.
It's like I say, it takes you out of the bubble. Because I think a lot of artists basically you just get stuck in their little bubble, and they have somebody running their Instagram account and all the rest of it. And it's always healthy to be in touch as much as you can,
It really is. And as a fan, as a music listener, to have that kind of connection with an artist, within reason, but to have that connection with an artist means the world of difference. And I would probably be more prone to continue, supporting them and buying their music if there was that bit of a connection. And I don't think some artists realize that.
I don't, it's not guaranteed that people will buy it. It's not guaranteed that people should.
No.
Artists can forget that.
Right.
The bubble, and it becomes a bit of a birthright almost, and it's not. You're as good as your last record.
Exactly. And in these days, when it's such an instant gratification society, it's like they're gonna, they've got you in their sights right now, and boom, they're onto something else.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean that part of it. I've always been quite prolific. I've always been good at putting out a lot of music, and I'm always doing a lot of things. So like Sarah Garvey, used to sing for Nightmares on Wax. She's called Comfy Bella. I'm on with the next album for HMD, for RTF88, sorry. I'm starting something with a guy called BENNETT. I don't know if you know him. Steve with Hobby.
Okay.
They've actually prized me out of the studio. I've promised to go to Ibiza next week for 3 or 4 days and sit in a room with them.
Wow.
So it's like there's a kind of constant throughput of music, but it's, you know, what you're saying is very true. People do move on so quickly that it's really important to be creative these days. It's really important to be doing something, to, you know, not to be sat back on your laurels and going, oh, I did this 30 years ago, I did that 20 years ago. You should like buy my music, you know. It's like, no, you should buy what I'm doing today. And if I've not done anything good today, then tell me to ship, you know.
Right. You know, because not everybody is going to get that 20-year retro cycle where like 20 years down the road and people are going to go, oh yeah, I remember that, totally love that, yeah, let's purchase tickets to go out and see it. It doesn't happen to everyone, and I think that that's part of the game, is that, you know, it's like, for the artists, especially like now what we're seeing is a resurgence in 80s popularity, you know, like late 80s into early 90s, and like the artists that are able to do like the retro 80s festivals and stuff. That's awesome. But it's not everybody. And, you know, granted, you know, when a band or a project breaks up, you know, some of them might stay in the music business, some of them may not. So, you know, for those artists that want to continue being in the spotlight or, you know, producing music or whatever, yeah, you've got to keep yourself current and relevant.
Yeah. No, and you've got, it's got to be true what you do. It's got to be you. You know, I'm not going to mention any names, but I have friends who have gone off into the current trends and stuff, and it's not them. Yeah,
right. And but it's a sharp listener though that's going to realize real quick though too that that's a genre maybe that they shouldn't have gone to. Exactly. And I don't know where pop music sits today is, I think, a real disappointment, having been a music fan all my life. But what is considered pop, you know, it's like, for whatever it's worth, I think that it leaves something to be desired.
It's just way too generic. You know, you can hear the AI in it. You can hear the what do you call it? It's like a factory system. It's just churning them out one after the other. And there are thousands of them.
It's one of those vocoders or a voice box and a synthesizer, and you got the next number one hit. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, really? Because that's where we're at anyway. Rob and I could go on forever about that.
It may well even, you know, when we started putting out records and vinyl and things, you know, I mean, there was a massive difference between what was going on in the clubs at the beginning of the 90s, as you'll remember, and what was going on in the charts. I can see that same kind of divide happening now again.
Yeah, and
which is healthy.
Yeah, well, that's what's going to create your standout artists, and it's a great way to like separate, you know, the wheat from the, you know, whatever it is that they separate the wheat from. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. And because you've got the standout artists that will, you know, whether it's constantly or even just randomly continue to be putting music out, and they're the ones that'll get, you know, established somewhat. And all of these other artists, you know, will, who knows? But there's many more one-hit wonders than there aren't.
This is true. This is also very true. No, it's important. I mean, you know, I think there's people who make music to be famous, and then there's people who just make music. And if you're just making the music, then, you know, eventually you get pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. And if what you're doing is honest, then it will resonate with somebody.
Right. You know, and everybody's got their own, you know, reasons for getting into the music. And I think that it's awesome. I love the fact, though, that still to this day, I can be listening to a platform or whatever and be surprised by something that I hear. Yeah. You know? And that, for me as a music fan, is a total thrill. And that's one of the reasons I think why even today, I mean, all of it is as fresh today as it was that long ago. You know, there are music, so many different, you know, that you guys were trailblazers enough at that point in time to be able to create sounds like what you were saying earlier, you know, dinking around, whether it was on the synthesizer or whatever, playing with sound effects. It's like there were just certain things that you guys created back then that like really, if I were to put it on for a lot of my younger friends today, they'd be like, well, you know, wow, you know, talking a language I don't understand, but they would totally love it and probably wonder, you know, who this new artist is. maybe not. You're not alone because of the fact that over probably most of the other tracks off of either of the all of albums, you know, was as successful as it was. But even still, though, a lot of those other tracks, you know, it's like I can put either album on and I just am transcendent.
Thank you. Well, it was an interesting time because, like I say, it was a whole new thing. It was signed to RCA, and then they put it out twice, and they only made back then you had to actually make CDs and records.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything, so, and they just didn't make enough records because they didn't know what it was. They didn't have a clue what it was. Right. We actually got signed by the head of A&R's secretary.
Yeah.
A&R. She convinced him to sign us. She convinced the head of A&R to sign Olive.
Wow. Oh my God.
And I remember the first meeting we went in, sitting in a room of people from corporate record company. Basically, then they were just looking at us like, "Who let this lot in?" What can we talk?
Well, like what you were saying a little bit ago. Look at who the chart toppers were at that point in time. If Britpop, the whole like you know, Britpop scene was hot. Sarah Brightman, yeah, of course, but you know, take that. There was just that period of time where there was, and I was working for a record store at that point in time here on the West Coast. And so I was getting to watch as all the music was coming out, you know, brand new every week. And oh my gosh, having to file that much grunge music was just like too much. And especially being from our area, because a lot of the artists that were on the shelves at that point in time were all local boys. You know, that I was either like 1 or 2 degrees separation from most of them. So, but you know, and then on the flip side, then you had groups like Olive, even like Republica and different artists like that were kind of starting to, you know, make some headway in different, you know, genres or, you know, new offshoots. And so that's what I think is probably was the saving grace that kind of kept the scene alive a little bit.
There's like the whole Bristol thing as well, the Massive Attacks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All those people come through Mochiba. There was a kind of movement. There was a wave. I think Olive. It was. It just used enough of like a commercial pop song,
right?
That's still pretty cool. So it was like really accessible.
Oh yeah.
Really, yeah. It was like it was basically making a drum and bass tune, because it basically was a drum and bass tune at the time. Not now, but it was then. That was 3 minutes long. You know, and not having like a 4-minute intro as we would usually do on a club tune. And
in the club scene, though, you could do that and get away with it. Whereas for radio airplay, though, no, they want the short and sweet version.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Taking one genre and applying the kind of commercial rules to it, but trying to make sure it remained a cool tune, a club tune. Because that was the thing. It was massive in the clubs. I actually persuaded RCA to make enough records by taking the head of marketing to out in London.
Okay.
And taking some clubs and just saying, every time we hear "You're Not Alone," we'll go to the next club. And eventually got the idea that it was that it was massive.
Okay. Well, obviously "You're Not Alone" was like, that was the first single basically, wasn't it?
It was the third single.
What was the first one?
The second single. The first single was a tune called "Miracle."
Okay.
And the number 40, something like that back then.
Right. Well, because I know that a few of the tracks actually did relatively well, or did really well. But I guess because "You're Not Alone," not that it's not an amazing song, because it is, but I've got my own favorites. "Push," "Love Affair." Oh my gosh! And you know, it's like there are just certain songs. Paper Hands. You know, it's like I've got my absolute favorites. And so, you know, and it's funny because Olive is one of those artists here, or at least, you know, in some circles, where you mention the band and people are like, I think I've heard of them. The song comes on and people are like out dancing because it's that it's such an anthem.
But it just kind of like so massively overachieved, you know?
Right.
That was the thing. I mean, they made something like, see if I can remember, they actually fabricated like 250 copies before they released, and they sold out by Tuesday morning. They put it out Monday and sold out by Tuesday morning. And was clever enough, and he'd already got a ruckload more on pre-order at the factory, so they could keep selling. But it just blew everybody's mind away. We didn't think it was going to do anything like that.
Yeah, you say, how would you know?
I even felt silly because I was going to these people like going, yes, it's a pop song, but it starts with a bip and a funny little noise, you know?
And try and explain that to people, though. I mean, even the executives, like what you're saying, you know, it's like, who are, you know, what is this? It's like their fingers supposed to be on the pulse. Hey, I see that we've got actually, we are on the countdown now. Unfortunately, it's going quick. We're right at about, from what I can tell, just a little over 7 minutes. So there again, thank you very much, Robin, for putting some time aside today. Totally appreciate this time with you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and our door is always open to you from here on out. So whenever you've got something going on, let's connect and get you back on things.
I don't know. Did I send you a link to the album? I can't remember.
That you did, and I being there's just been so much going on, but I know I'm almost positive that you did.
Okay.
Feel free to resend it if you would like, but I'll got my absolute favorites, and so you know, and it's funny because Olive is one of those artists here, or at least you know, in some circles where you mention the band and people are like, I think I've heard of them. The song comes on and people are like out dancing because it's such an anthem.
But it just kind of like so massively overachieved, you know?
Right.
That was the thing. I mean, they made something like, see if I can remember, they actually fabricated like 250 copies before they released, and they sold out by Tuesday morning. They put it out Monday and sold out by Tuesday morning. And was clever enough, and he'd already got a ruckload more on pre-order at the factory, so they could keep selling. But it just blew everybody's mind away. We didn't think it was going to do anything like that.
Yeah, you say, how would you know?
I even felt silly because I was going to these people like going, yes, it's a pop song, but it starts with a bip and a funny little noise, you know?
And try and explain that to people, though. I mean, even the executives, like what you're saying, you know, it's like, who are, you know, what is this? It's like their fingers supposed to be on the pulse. Hey, I see that we've got actually, we are on the countdown now. Unfortunately, it's going quick. We're right at about, from what I can tell, just a little over 7 minutes. So there again, thank you very much, Robin, for putting some time aside today. Totally appreciate this time with you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and our door is always open to you from here on out. So whenever you've got something going on, let's connect and get you back on things.
I don't know. Did I send you a link to the album? I can't remember.
That you did, and I being there's just been so much going on, but I know I'm almost positive that you did.
Okay.
Feel free to resend it if you would like, but I'll check and then I'll let you know. So
okay,
cool. Before we totally run out of time, though, I've got one really goofy question. Not like some of my other ones may not have been, but I've got one really goofy question for you that hopefully you'll entertain me long enough to give me an answer. We do this podcast, and on this podcast, actually we go over a bunch of really kind of wild, offbeat, fringe topics. So to cut to the chase, Robin, tell me, in all your travels, in all your time wherever you've been, has there ever been a time where you've looked up at the sky or whatever, or had some kind of experience with something you couldn't quite explain? You know, that could go either way.
There's something I couldn't explain. I couldn't explain my children. That was quite hard.
You know, that's a completely different.
I have children, but when my wife was pregnant with my first child, and ever was going, "This is amazing, this is amazing." I was just like going, "This is horrible. There's no back door."
There is, but it's going to cost you if you run through it. You know.
Oh, no, that quite. Something I couldn't explain.
Any kind of aerial phenomenon, anything like that?
Okay, aerial phenomenon. No, I haven't seen any aerial phenomenon like that.
Okay, other than probably what you maybe caught online or something like that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. because, you know, we were inundated here on the East Coast here not that long ago with a bunch of like drones and, or yeah, that kind of thing. And that's actually what the podcast, we cover everything from government cover-ups and projects to UFOs, cryptids. And I actually have never really studied to see like what kind of, any kind of weird stuff like that there might be back in Spain, but I'm sure there's probably something kind of funky out back there.
There's quite a like mainstream program on it on one of the channels, like once a week. Yeah, you know, there is a lot of interest in it over here. I just haven't got it, so I'm sorry.
And not a problem, you know, because and just like there's no right answer or wrong answer. It's all a matter of, you know, perspective. And, you know, if a person's ever had an experience, you know, sometimes they want to talk about it, sometimes they don't. A lot of people are like, yeah, if they don't see it in front of them, they don't believe it's true. So, you know,
I'm happy to believe it's true. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
You know, I'm happy to believe anything. I can smell a fraud 100 miles away. But when something's real in front of you, there's plenty of things like that.
Right.
People who can communicate with things and all the rest of it. And when it's real, it's real. I don't necessarily understand it.
Exactly. And I think, and that's kind of why we meet, because none of us have any clues to what's going on or to what it really is. So it's always, anyway, so yeah, but that's a long dark rabbit hole that we don't necessarily need to go down. Because we are getting short on time. Are there any shout outs that you would like to do to anybody or anybody that you'd like to say hi to?
These people I'm going to be working with in Ibiza, BENNETT, and it's a guy called BENNETT and it's a guy called Steve Covey, who was responsible for Fila Brasilia. Don't know if you remember them.
Yeah. Wow.
We've sort of known each other for 30 years, but we've never worked together. So this is going to be the first time we work together.
Hi.
Steve Edwards. Do you know Steve Edwards, the guy from World Hold On?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sound of Violence. That was a big hit in the States, I think.
Okay, yeah. Wow. You've rubbed shoulders with some pretty amazing artists over your years.
We worked together a little bit, me and Steve. We also something together and stuff like that. These are all just people from Sheffield. Parrot, Winston, Rob Gordon, all these kind of people that I grew up with, got my hands dirty with.
Wasn't there a group by the name of Heaven 17 that was from Sheffield?
There was 717. There was ABC, Human League was Sheffield as well. It's a dirty, well, it was then anyway, dirty industrial northern town.
Right.
And it's turned, Joe Cocker was from Sheffield. Yeah, Joe Cocker's minor son from Sheffield.
Oh, wow, okay.
He used to play the Walkley Band's working club for his mum at New Year's Eve.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I love hearing stuff like that.
People like that. Let me think. The Arctic Monkeys, they're from Sheffield.
Okay.
Def Leppard, is it? I think they're from Sheffield.
Yeah, that's right. Because there was like a rock band in there that strange juxtaposition against all the synth groups. So we're at the 2-minute mark, my friend. What does the rest of the day look like for Robin Taylor-Firth?
The day looks like some tea in bed. It's nearly 10 o'clock.
That's right. Yeah. I know it's going to say thank you for staying up on our behalf. I totally appreciate that. So just to let you know, I've got some of the different tracks from Nightmares on Wax. Also, a number of the tracks are on rotation on the station. So our listeners are getting a chance to check you out on a regular basis. But I do, like I said, want to remind you that whenever you've got something going on, let's connect, because I'd love to keep us updated with what you've got happening.
Have a listen to the new album, and there'll be some stuff on there on your like, I'm sure.
Checking that out this afternoon, definitely. And audience, don't forget to do that as well. So before we get totally cut off, let's just do this. I want to say thank you again to Robin Taylor-Firth from OlyWA and Nightmares on Wax and the projects that he's got going on. You've got to check his stuff out, though, because there's a lot of stuff out there to be heard and loved. Robin, thank you again. This has been an absolute pleasure.
And down to you. Thank you very much for having me on.
You bet. So we will see you again at some point soon. Guys, don't go anywhere. On behalf of Robin and myself, DJ D Phoenix, you've been watching KONVOS here on the Groove Zone Network, as well as listening to us on X5 Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages. Thank you. Thank you. Started feeling concerned there, so I'm glad we got that fixed. So, yeah. I'll let you know when this airs, which will probably be within the next week or so. So,
Okay, send me a link if you would. And
all right, and I'll let you know too. Yeah, speaking of links, I'll let you know if you sent me one already.
yeah, okay, brilliant.
All right,
listen.
Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you soon, Robin. Thank you.
Take good care, man.
You too. We'll talk to you later. Bye bye. Okay.
Now, what do you mean? You know, when I'm